Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegrand, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David and Dan recap the Twins' 3-game series against the Cincinnati Reds. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me, as always, is Dan Thompson. The Twins only managed to take 1 of 3 from a sub-500 Reds team, Dan. But thankfully, it was on Sunday. The Vikings also won. It's a good day to be a Minnesota.
Spoiler alert there, David. You can't just say those things to people. Maybe they're waiting until Monday to watch the Vikings game.
Okay, that would be worse. I mean, what's the opposite of Monday morning quarterback? Monday morning watching?
Yeah, maybe.
Like, I can understand later in the day.
Okay.
But this won't be released. Nobody's listening to this.
I just wanted to make sure because we've been down this road before a couple times. We've been burned, by
it's true.
This sorts of things. So I just wanted
Bruce
to be
Willis
sure.
has been dead the whole time.
Yeah.
It's okay. We can. Okay. With that, Dan, I see you have a note here about the NFL. What's this about?
So first of all, I don't think I watched any NFL games in Week 1, and so it just took me aback when the new kickoff rules came into place. And then there was the onside kick rule, and all I could think of was Rob Manfred. And I wondered, had Rob Manfred been given the commissioner's duties over another league? Because the rules about the onside... So the 49ers line up for that onside kick at the end of the Vikings, and there's 3 conditions in order now that you can do this, right? So you have to be behind... It has to be the fourth quarter, and it has to be, a full moon or, a quarter moon, some other requirement. This is so silly. Why can't people just line up and do an onside kick whenever they want? Again, it is taking the game away from the coaches and putting it into the hands of an arbitrary ruleman somewhere, in New York City, probably.
I don't fully know what you're talking about in a lot of different ways here. I understand you don't like the new onside kick rules for the NFL.
No. If a listener, jumped in right now, they could think we're talking about the shift ban or something like that right now. It's the same thing. That's my point, is that what has happened to baseball is happening to the NFL, and I don't like it.
I mean, yes, rules have changed, I guess. I suppose in that way, Dan, the Venn diagram does intersect in that there have been some changes between Manfred and Roger Goodell.
Man, am I the grumpy old man here in this episode? I didn't anticipate this. I thought you'd be on my side.
I'm just having trouble getting fired up about it because the Vikings won. Maybe if they lost as a result of an onside kick. But anyway, Dan, we have wandered off topic enough.
Right about that.
In our lane here, baseball, Dan. Let's go ahead and jump into the series recap.
Series recap.
Game 1, Dan, Twins lose this one 8-4. I was in attendance. I was very excited to be at this game. I had the season ticket holder pick where I got to do the valet parking again. I always tell those boys when I give them the keys to that car, no more scratches than are already on it, Dan. No more scratches than are already there.
Do you count them first, 94, 95, 96, before you hand off the keys?
I would be there all night. Dan. No, I mean honestly, if they got in an accident, it would probably only be an improvement, really.
No, but the Twins looked like they were. I don't know. This was a good early game. So the top of the first, a great double play turned by a diving Lewis to end the inning. The Reds took the lead in the top of the second on a Friedel solo home run, but it's 1-0. And then Bailey Ober's on the mound, and so you think this is going to go great. Bottom of the fifth, Byron Buxton returns to the lineup, hits a solo home run to tie the game. The baseball gods are smiling on the Twins here. You think it's all going to go super well. And then the top of the 7th happened.
Top of the 7th was a rough one, Dan. I don't want to get into it because we're going to get into it later. The Reds lead it 7-1 at the end of the top of the 7th.
But the Twins don't go away. Bottom of the 7th, they get 3 runs back. Larnach walked. Santana singles. Castro hits an RBI single to score Larnach. Brooks Lee then is able to knock in both Castro and Santana with kind of a little looping single into right field. So it's 7-4, still manageable because you figure the Twins have Byron Buxton back, and so you think maybe there's a chance later in the game.
Top of the 8th, Dan, Michael Tonkin enters. Spencer Steer, you remember him? We got a guy, do you remember Tyler Malley? Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
It's hard to
Tyler
remember
Malley,
a guy
Four-Start O'Malley, I think was what he called him.
Do you know I have seen more games at Target Field than he saw, and he played for the organization, Dan. But anyway, Spencer Steer, the guy we traded away for Tyler Malley, he hit a double, and then TJ Friedel singles him home. And then Friedel gets caught in a rundown between first and second. And to show you, Dan, the fundamental skill that this baseball team has, they fail to tag him out. And the thing is, normally in these situations, when you're watching, you're sort of thinking like, okay, he definitely left the baseline, right? Like
Sure.
The umps should have called him out. So Rocco comes out and he argues, but Dan, I was there live and I watched that. That man stayed on a direct line. You could have put a string from first base to second base, and he would have had his feet constantly straddling that line, and the Twins still couldn't figure out how to get this guy out, Dan.
I mean, it's sandlot baseball, right? You should be able to make that play. It ends up not mattering, right? Because the Twins lose this game 8-4 anyway. And Rocco was already clearly managing to win the rest of the series, using Tonkin to finish out the game, which was a good call. But the problem is that it did not go well in Game 2.
No, Reds win this one 11-1, and it just never really mattered, Dan. The only play that I will say mattered is something we're going to talk about later with Buxton's willingness or desire or sheer will to make this team win baseball games. But it's so bad. SWR struggles, 3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 3 earned runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. Varland's even worse. We'll talk about him later. The only note we should make about SWR, on a wild pitch, a runner was coming home, and Vasquez gets to the ball, flips it to SWR, and SWR fields the play like a catcher. He blocks home plate once he has the ball and he gets the tag down for the out, and he is absolutely pumped that he gets out of this inning without allowing a run. But that is a short-lived hype, Dan, as he crumbles for the rest of his start.
Do you think Louis Varland was kind of, mad that like Christian Vasquez had made a nice defensive play? Because the last time Louis Varland was out, or at least the last time he started, like nobody could make a play on the infield, and he spouted all those curse words and got super mad. Like Louis Varland is watching his career. I guess we're going to talk about it later too, but like his career is just taking a serious nosedive right now.
It's not good. All of our previous yearnings for him to be in the bullpen, maybe we should have thought better of that, Dan.
Well, the thing is, I mean, we had high hopes because Correa was back for this game. They sent Kersey down, and so Correa's back. But then after that 9-run fourth inning, Rocco's like, okay, we're going to pull these guys out. So he pulls the big three of Correa, Buxton, and Lewis kind of, in stages over the rest of the game. Blewett comes in, Thielbar comes in, they give up runs, and thank goodness for Kyle Farmer, really shutting the door in the 9th inning there. The only Twins pitcher to not allow a run. And I think this is what happened the last time he pitched too. There's something about Kyle Farmer. There's a magic that he has that just shuts the teams down late in games.
I'm telling you, Dan, the Twins would be better off in a lot of these circumstances just letting position players go for it. I wish that they hadn't made these new rules where you can't use position players. I knew you'd jump on that. But it is funny. I do appreciate Twins fans, folks, because I'm sure not many of you were watching at this point, but Farmer got a standing ovation as he came off of the mound because he's the only guy not to allow a run.
Isaac, you did something right.
That's not fair.
I wanted it to go to my head.
That's not fair to Kyle Farmer. Kyle Farmer's been doing a lot of things right here over the last couple weeks.
Yeah, so finally, Game 3, we get a Twins victory. They win this one 9-2. Festa's on the mound. He's not great. He only goes 3 2/3, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. The Reds are up early 2-0, but thank goodness, Dan, thank goodness that the Twins are able to rally and finally put some runs up.
Yeah, bottom of the 4th, they were able to tie it up here. Could have had more, though, with runners at the corners and nobody out. Larnach grounds to first, so they get the out there at first, and then they throw home to get Lewis. Now, to Lewis's credit, he recognized that this was happening. He tuned out the voice of Tommy Watkins telling him to go, 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 and he gets himself in a little rundown, which allows Carlos Santana to get all the way from first to third, which was important because then Castro comes up and with 2 outs singles him in. So it's 2-1, which is so much better than a totally deflating, runners at the corners, no outs, where you get no runs. At least they got the 1.
Yeah, I mean, that would be standard Twins fare, though, to have no outs in the corners and no runs.
And then from there, Ronnie Henriquez and Cole Sands keep the Reds quiet long enough to get to the bottom of the 6th, where the Twins get 3 runs here, all on 2-out RBI hits from Jeffers and then from Lee. So it's 4-2. And the bottom of the 7th, we're going to come back to this a little bit later, but a great 2-out rally here. Santana with a 2-run home run to make it 6-2. And then the Twins load the bases, and then Brooks Lee clears them with a triple to right field. So it's 9-2 Twins. And again, Rocco can manage for the next game because he's feeling pretty good about this one. He even let Jorge Alcala pitch again.
Yep, so he gets 6 of the next 7 Reds batters out to spare the back of the bullpen. Jorge Alcala, I am so mad about. We're going to get there. I'm not going to jump the gun. We will talk about this, but I haven't been so mad at a singular player in quite some time.
Really?
Thompson.
Alcala gets that much rage.
I was so upset on Monday night. We'll talk
All
about
right,
that.
Sorry, I'm trying to get you going here, but I probably should let you.
He closed out Game 3. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. With that, let's go on to Puckett's picks to sort of pick me up here, Dan, before we get into more hostility.
Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett!
Puckett's picks winner.
I was going to say, you should be very happy about this because you picked Santana, who had 9 points. Hoges took Buxton. So we had a little switcheroo. There was a mix-up, we should say. So last episode, we had this wrong because as it turned out, Hoges had texted in his pick. We've got the receipts if anybody's curious. So Hoges ended up with Buxton with 6 points. It didn't really matter. I had Lewis with 5. The listeners, as the listeners have done, tried to ride the coattails of a previous high, and Matt Wallner struck out 6 times and was negative 6 points. So, David, this anoints you officially the champion of the 2024 regular season Puckett's Picks winner.
Thank you. I appreciate the accolade. I'm going to add it to the trophy case. I am surprised that it finished this early, especially with 4 options. But when you have such a dominating performance, Dan,
my gosh.
it is. It's
we're
one of those
picking
things,
players,
you know,
David.
like
we're just picking players. You're not out there on the field. Let's remember here.
I am, Dan. I am in spirit, Dan. Whenever I pick a guy, they know that I'm cheering for them even harder than normal. But no, I do appreciate it. I do like our new format. We do need to discuss, actually, we had a listener on X reach out, Joe NHL Glickek. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. But so he said that our scoring system should change, that grounding into double play shouldn't be -1, it should be -2 because it's even more impactful. And Dan, I think he's got a point.
Yeah, but then that complicates the math as we're counting things up just a little bit more. I think less math is probably better for us when we're trying to add up all these hits and things like that. But his point's not wrong. Well, I guess a double is worth 2, and we always count that for 2, and then a triple's worth 3. So maybe we can figure it out.
I know you don't teach math, Dan, but this really isn't as much of a stretch as you're making it out to be, I don't think.
I'll tell you the truth. I'm a little confused by your tactics.
I'm not sure that works there, actually. But
A squared plus B squared.
Anyway.
All right. With that season standings, Dan, thankfully, as you mentioned, I have wrapped things up. But I have currently 23.5 points. Hoges in second with 16. You're in third with 11. And the listeners bringing up the rear at 10. I'm hoping for the listeners' sake, Dan, at this point, I just want you to come in last so bad. That's what I'm playing for at this point, Dan.
See, and I could still catch Hoges with a couple bonus points in here. So 4 series left. We're still, like with our children, right? We're playing for second, right? It's not just about winning.
Well, with that, Dan, let's go ahead and jump into Beast versus Bench.
Beast versus Bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
So I have to go with Byron Buxton for coming back in this series without a rehab stint, which I'm really liking the bring up some, instead of sending the players to the minors, bring the minors to the players. Doesn't this system make a whole lot more sense? You get more at-bats. It can't be that much different than playing in a game, for goodness sake. It's all about timing against that level of pitching. So anyway, I'm on that horse now. But I'm going to give my beast to Buxton for his competitiveness, especially in Game 2 in the bottom of the first, where he's got that infield single and he is hustling, and you can tell that he is not comfortable when he is running down that first base line. And the terrible irony, of course, is that's the only run that the Twins score, and they lose 11-1. But I love the heart for this guy. I know that people say, oh, well, he's broken and he's always hurt. But for goodness sake, I mean, what is he supposed to do, right? He could sit out and just take his money, but he decides to come back. I appreciate that about him, that he is trying to play through the pain to help his team to the playoffs.
How concerned were you that he injured himself in a new way?
So concerned.
The way that
I was, yes, absolutely thought that was, and nobody said anything, and but that was the camera shot I was waiting for. Was Buxton wincing?
He was cruising down that line, Dan. I got to go with Santana, 4 for 8 with 2 RBI, and again that big home run. I think that man, if he can keep it up at his age, Dan, I think that the Twins should try and bring him back next season. If you look at our prospects in the minors, I just think that first base is going to be a position of need, and I do think that Santana is one of the better options out there. It would be interesting, though, if they could spend some money on a Pete Alonso or, one of those other free agent first basemen who has a bigger bat. But looking at the way this front office has been thinking about things, I'm just not sure they're going to do that. And I'm guessing they could get Carlos Santana for a much more reasonable amount of money.
But remember this guy? Alex Kirilloff.
Who?
That's who that is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm aware.
You remember
I
him?
thought. Can I tell you what I thought you were going to play? I thought you were going to play this.
Well, don't worry, be happy.
I thought they were going to bring back Joey Gallo.
sure he's
I was
out
very
there.
confused.
No, this has gone a lot better than that.
That proves the point. That proves the point, though, Dan. I truly didn't even think about Alex Kirilloff to play first base. And again, he's been injured. He had this mysterious injury that he didn't tell anybody about. Yes, he's not dead. He does have one arm shorter than the other, but no, he's not dead. I don't know. We'll see. I think that putting the eggs of first base in the Alex Kirilloff basket is just not a good choice at this point.
Hoges are like onions.
That's not a metaphor, Dan. That's just me saying
It's a comparison.
there's a basket of first
There's not
base.
literally a basket. You're not literally putting the eggs of Alex Kirilloff.
I would argue that that's
into
not
a
a great
basket.
that's me using an idiom using Alex Kirilloff in it. It's not me making a comparison to Alex Kirilloff.
I'm just picturing Alex Kirilloff like hatching out of an egg and like at first base. That's all I could. I'm sorry.
Anyway, I'm going to give the bench to Alcala for walking India, which we're going to talk about in a second. But truly, I got to give it to Wallner. 0 for 12 with 6 strikeouts. This was rough, Dan. And you can strike out a lot if you're hitting a lot of home runs. But when you go 0 for 12, you can't strike out that much, Dan. Get on base for crying out loud.
Kiss the cows.
He did not look good. That's what you get. We've talked about it every time. I feel like we say the same thing with him. It's a boom and bust. Lower him in the lineup, I guess. It's really hard. What do you do with him? Like you just have to stay the course, I guess.
I suppose he did get hit by a couple of pitches, though, so there's that.
Yeah.
We're about to begin bonding adamantium to weapon exoskeleton.
So I'm going to give the bench spot to Louis Varland for his ineptitude. The guy wants every chance, and he keeps squandering every chance that he gets in majestic fashion, right? Like, he didn't just give up a couple inherited runners, which, by the way, Aaron Gleeman had a tweet earlier in this series that the Twins, and this is, I think, increased, have allowed an MLB high 45% of inherited runners to score. That would be the highest rate in Twins history and the highest rate by any MLB bullpen in a full season in 21 years. If you think that you're seeing them allow a lot of runners to score, it's because they are, and it's been dreadful.
I knew exactly what to do, but in a much more real sense, I had no idea what to do.
You just imagine, like Rocco calling the bullpen, guys, you're not supposed to let those runners score. They're not supposed to score. Guys, that's your job.
I think there are times, though, when it's just the fielders making bad choices. How many times over the last month especially have we seen somebody throw to the wrong base or try to get an out at home when they should just get the safe play at first? Like, I think there's a little bit of overcompensation happening, but obviously there's also a lot of home runs and doubles to the gap. Like, I'm not just trying to absolve the pitchers. I just think there's a little bit of a team effortness to that. That's part of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But really, Dan.
Well,
but really, Dan, there's only so many errors recorded when you're looking at these inherited runners that can be accounted for due to these errors.
Well, anyway, let's go on here and let's critique Rocco now, the rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
So game 1, top 7, Dan. I can't get over this. So Ober has done well. He's given up 3 earned runs at this point, but there are runners on first and second. He's at like 90 some odd pitches. There's 2 outs, and India's coming up. So it's the top of the order for the Reds. India followed by De La Cruz. You need to get an out here. Rocco brings in Alcala. Again, it's a 2-run game at this point. So Rocco has already resigned himself to not use his better arm. So Jackson Duran are going to stay in the bullpen. They're not coming out. So he goes to Alcala, which, again, maybe 2 months ago, you'd be like, well, yeah, this should be a pretty easy out for Alcala. But in this moment, Dan, if you're Rocco, you have to be screaming at Alcala. You cannot get to De La Cruz. You can't get to De La Cruz. No matter what you do, you have to get India out. And it's one thing, Dan, if India beats him, right? If he gets a hit, that's fine. I'm okay with that because at least you tried. But you walked him on 5 pitches to get to a very, very dangerous hitter, Dan, who's going to be a top 10 finisher, probably in a lot of categories for the MLB. De La Cruz gets up there, and Alcala throws this like 92-mile-an-hour sinker that just sits middle. And De La Cruz, he's just sitting there waiting for it. He is just waiting. He's like, well, yeah, this is obviously my moment. There was no question in his mind what he was there to do, Dan.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Yeah.
Is this not why you are here?
I mean, that's not why a lot of Twins fans were there. No, though you pointed out you were excited to see De La Cruz do something.
Yes, we'll talk about that in a moment here in the Minnesota moment. But I'm upset at Rocco because I think Ober had a better chance of getting India than Alcala did, because I think that Ober has shown himself to be more disciplined to not allow a walk in that scenario, knowing the consequences of what that walk would bring about.
But wouldn't we, if he had stayed in and given up a hit to India, people would be slamming Rocco for leaving Ober in after giving up 4 hits in a row? So I don't know.
I'd be more sympathetic to giving up the hit to India and then pulling Ober before De La Cruz than I would be in pulling Ober and then Alcala walking India.
I just wish it wasn't Alcala. I think you can put just about anybody else in there.
See, I just don't even think that's even remotely true, Dan. Who are you going to put out there who's got a better chance?
That's the dilemma, right? So I guess I'm on your side in the sense that, yeah, Ober you should leave in. I just thought Ober had kind of lost it at that point too, and it's only a 2-run game, and so I understand bringing in a fresh arm, some other way to look at this guy. I mean, now he's the 4th time through the lineup at that point, so I would rather see somebody else. It's just that Alcala's not the guy I want to see right there. Put in Scott Blewett. Put in somebody that they don't expect to see even in that moment. That's where I'm at with it, I guess.
Fake him out. They'll never see it coming. Okay, what do you have for Rocco, Dan?
So I saw that Rocco was getting some heat online from people about resting Correa and Buxton in Game 3. I don't necessarily have the issue with it. And this is not just because they won the game handily. I mean, it's a best case scenario, right? Because they get the rest and you still get the win. I do wonder, though, if I think what was in his mind was, well, we can pinch hit with those guys later. If we have to in a key spot or something like that, keep them off their feet. The Cleveland series is obviously crucial. It's a risk, though, right? Because if you don't win this game against the Reds and you don't build some positive momentum going into that Guardians series, man, that's really ugly, which we should point out to the standings here. So the Twins they're still 2.5 up on the Tigers, and also the Mariners are right there now, 2.5 back. The Twins are 2.5 behind the Royals. And then the Guardians are, 4 games ahead of the Royals. So the Twins are 6.5 back. Obviously, winning the division is almost out of the question unless they can sweep the Guardians here. All that is to say, they needed this game, and I'm glad they got it.
Yeah, I'm not real upset about resting Buxton and Correa, especially with how quickly they came back without doing rehab stints. So, yeah, if people are going to be upset online, I just think that's not a lot of doctors out there, Dan, making those critiques.
I don't believe that man's ever been to medical school.
It's the plantar fascia and the slashing of it to strengthen it. You gotta tear down the house to build it up stronger, right?
Sure, I'm sure that's a phrase, Dan. Let's go on here, Minnesota moment.
Minnesota moment.
I'm trying all these jokes, and I feel like they're not landing with you, David, tonight. Are you tired? Are you kind of worn out from the day here?
It's been a long day, and I got to be honest, Dan, between the Twins game, the Vikes game, and then you got an F1 race, and we had
we didn't even
marital
talk about
shower,
the F1
and
race.
I had responsibilities at church early this morning. It's been a very long day. Perhaps your humor is lost on me, Dan. I'm a little bit upset at this Twins team for only winning 1 of 3. It's a whole bunch of things, Dan. But I am going to choose Game 1 top 7 De La Cruz's Grand Slam as my moment, and particularly because I think part of this is my fault.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
Last episode, I said I would like to see De La Cruz steal a base. Okay? That's what I wanted to see. I was excited to be there Monday night. It never really happened where he had an opportunity because every time he came up to the plate, he was hitting a home run or he's getting on base another way and didn't steal. But anyway, I am choosing that Grand Slam as my moment. I was at the game. I got to go with a couple of friends. It was great. But my secondary moment, Dan, is watching De La Cruz attempting to steal a base in Game 3 top 7 and Farmer and Jeffers combining to get De La Cruz out. This was so fun because watching it live, I did not think they got him. I didn't think he was anywhere close to getting him. And then on the replay, it's clear as day they got him. So it's really cool to see the Twins, who are not a good run defensive team, stop one of the best base stealers in the world from taking second base.
That's what you should have wished to see. Right, and then that would have been okay, right? To throw out De La Cruz is almost more impressive than actually seeing him steal a base. My moment is going to be in the bottom of the 7th of Game 3. It's Lee's triple down the right field line. It took a great bounce past the right fielder, not Max Kepler, right? Max Kepler would have played that angle and gotten that right. But it clears the bases. They may not have needed it at that point, but it really put the game out of reach. I've seen, again, maybe I'm spending too much time looking at X and seeing, reading comments on Dan Hayes' tweets and things like this, but I think Brooks Lee has done a very good job this season, given what he's been asked to do. He is not Royce Lewis, right? He's not going to have the offensive numbers that Royce, but he has played a solid shortstop, a solid second base when asked. I think defensively he has been very competent, and he's got baseball smarts, and he is going to be a key player for this team, and I hope that his bat can continue to take the next step. Maybe his ceiling isn't the same as the big three, but if he can be a solid middle infielder who can contribute on the base paths and contribute at the plate, I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, I think that saying that he can't produce the numbers that Royce Lewis can produce with the way that Lewis has produced the last month or so, I don't know that that's the sort of slight that you think it is in your mind, Dan.
No, I just mean but if we take his whole body of work, right? Royce Lewis's 160 games that he's played now, which is a more significant sample size than the conversations we were having 4 or 5 months ago. I think,
and yet your view is still the same, even though the sample has increased and it should have changed your outlook. You insist your perspective remains.
But remember, Royce nearly hit a grand slam just last week, right? I mean, that was pretty magical.
He nearly hit a grand slam?
It was top of the wall. It should have just stayed. Like, who needs robs all the fun?
You were the chosen one.
All right. Let's move on here. Can we?
Yeah, Mauer's Musings. Here we go.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's Musings.
This is what I really want to know, and it sort of piggybacks off your thoughts on resting Correa and Buxton in Game 3. How healthy do you think Correa is, and how much of this is him just saying, I'm going to come back to force this team to make the postseason, even though everybody on the team does not seem to want to make the postseason?
I think that he's probably better than 50%, but nowhere near 100%. So what does that make him, about 70% or something like that? But this is a tricky question because last year he was not playing 100% for almost, most of the end of that year until he actually tore the fascia. So, and he can't do that in this one because this is, I'm just wondering, is this what the Giants and the Mets were afraid of? Is some other injury in that foot kind of contributing to the issues that he had? Because it seems like they couldn't do the same things with this one that they would have were it not on that surgically repaired foot.
I don't believe that man's ever been to medical school.
What are you talking about? This is
not
not
a
just me
chance,
saying
Dan.
this.
If you just said that sentence to a doctor, I think they would have looked at you just like you were the craziest person they'd ever seen.
To answer your question, I don't think he's that healthy, but I think he's healthy enough to come back. And if he doesn't play well, then they can say, well, shoot, maybe he shouldn't have, but at least he tried, and he's better than with the alternatives, I suppose.
Didn't I call this too? Last episode, I said, I bet he's going to come back
full
with
of
not
calls,
much fanfare.
aren't you?
They're just going to... I am. I got all of them, Dan. I got the home run distances, and I got Correa's return with not much pomp and circumstance.
I mean, how healthy do you think he is?
Not great.
Okay.
I think I just think looking at his face. Now I know I'm stealing a Dan Thompson line
now you're
here.
saying the same thing.
Yes, I am. The look of pain that Dan Thompson is so good at interpreting. I would say when the camera went on him at shortstop, that wasn't a look of seriousness, ready to make a play. That's, oh my goodness, I may die out here.
Well, they really need to mic him up at the next Apple TV podcast or Apple TV broadcast.
Oh, don't even get me started. Today I get home and I have the Twins game on delay, but I was listening in the car, so I was going to turn it on live. So I'm listening to the radio and I get home and it's about the top of the fifth and I'm looking all over the place and I can't find what station this Twins game is on. So I go to Bally and then I go to Fox and then I go to Apple TV and I'm getting so entirely frustrated. Of course, it's on the Roku channel.
Of course.
Which, my goodness, I thought I was going to get my bunny ears out to figure out how to get this channel, Dan.
So my question for you is, when do you think, and you might need your tinfoil hat for this one actually, when do you think it was that the Twins decided that not 2024 but 2025 was going to be their year?
Have you no joy in your life? Is there no song in your heart?
Come on.
So I think that truly, Dan, I don't know how to answer this question because the way that Aaron Gleeman and Dan Hayes and Park and all of those other guys have written, none of them are of the perspective that this Twins ownership group is going to put money into this team for 2025 because they didn't in 2024. They think that this is the new norm. This is par for the course. And I think if they don't make some serious additions to pitching, you don't even need to spend that much on position players. Get an adequate backup for Byron Buxton in center field who can play center field every day if necessary and make a couple of acquisitions, 2 good starters, 2, 3, 5 good relievers, I guess. And then we have a baseball team who can do some damage, Dan. But I don't know that they're going to do that. And if you're bargain basement hunting for pitching, you're not going to be able to be successful as an organization, as this season has proven. But I don't think they care, Dan. They're trying to improve this team in other ways, where the only true way that you're going to improve this team is by spending money, and this ownership group, they refuse to do so, Dan.
There he is, beating that dead horse.
I don't think you're wrong. I just wish it was at some point they would say, yeah, this is the year, not next year, because it feels like they didn't invest at the trade deadline. Maybe they're just hoping that it's all going to be about prospects and that they're going to follow the Cleveland Guardians lead from 10, 12 years ago. Or it's just very few organizations are like the Rays and the Guardians. And those teams don't have like a ton to show for it either. That's the other thing. So like, what are they trying to emulate here?
I want to build a championship culture.
That's what they'll tell you, Dan. But there is no championship culture to be found here. If you're not willing to spend on the few positions that you actually need to spend, you're never going to be successful without just all sorts of luck.
Right, because they have great value. Like, they have a lot of bargain deals right now, and they're just not putting the money where they ought to. I think you're totally right. Anyway, we should move on here and grade this Red Series.
Series grades.
I mean, I'm going to give them a D-. The Reds are 73 and 78, and you're fighting to make the playoffs, and you can't figure out a way to win 2 of 3 at home. I do want to say the only reason I'm not giving it an F is obviously because they won a game. But I do think, man, just watching this Reds team, they don't look like a sub-500 team. I'm kind of interested. I haven't really followed the Reds, right? I don't know how their season has gone other than seeing the Elly De La Cruz highlights. But I kind of wonder if they're a better team than their record states, and I wonder if they're going to be a team we're going to be talking about in the next couple of years.
I think they came into the series like winners of 7 of their last 10. Like, you know, they're still fighting it in a decently competitive division there too. So yeah, I agree. My grade is actually lower. Advanced Retreat, it's hard for me to give them a very high score on this because they really needed to at least win 2 out of 3. I gave them a 4 out of 10 there. As far as well-played baseball, I gave them a 6 out of 10. It's these rookies are wearing down. Louis Varland did not pitch well. Alcala is not pitching well. The lack of depth on this team is pretty pronounced right now. So a 6 out of 10 there. So that's a 10 out of 20. That's an F. It feels like either it's an F or an A at this point in the season because either, yes, you won enough games in the series, you won the series, or you didn't, and you really have to be winning series right now.
All right, well, let's keep pushing here, Dan. Now let's take a look around the league, which is really postseason focused.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
As you mentioned, Dan, the Mariners and Tigers are only 2.5 back from the Twins. I've been sending you the tickets that I'm interested in.
You sent me a picture of like a hotel room or something even that you want me to splurge for here.
So I think it makes most sense for me to stay in Cologne and then take the train in to Essen for the festival itself. And so I think that's great. And you should know, Dan, I fly business class or above.
Sure.
I'm not a coach guy personally. So I just want you to be aware when that price tag comes, Dan, it's not nothing.
I didn't think that the Tigers were going to get this close when they were 9 back and we made the bet. I didn't think this was going to happen this way.
That was my whole point because I told you as a Twins fan, I would still be believing and you were like, no way, you'd be saying this is done. 9 games is not that much, Dan. And especially when you're chasing a team like the Twins that is doing everything in their power to not make the postseason, it makes your path seem that much more reasonable.
We should also, you didn't put the whole playoff graphic on here, but I think I'm gonna distill this and discern this from the standings. So the Yankees are right now the number 1 seed, and they and the Guardians are the 2. They would have the byes. So then the Astros as the 3rd division leader would play right now the Twins, and then the Orioles as the top wild card would host the Royals. But this could jockey because the Royals play against the Tigers this week, which is a bit of a conundrum right now.
I don't know who to cheer for, Dan. It's a very confusing time because you sort of want the Twins to catch the Royals, but at the same time, you want to make sure the Tigers don't catch the Twins. So I think ideally the Tigers get swept just so we can sort of stop thinking about that. And then we're only having one team really right on our heels with the Mariners. But I don't know. I really don't know because if the Twins sweep the Guardians, now I'm hoping, okay, well, actually, it would be better if the Royals win. So I don't know, Dan. I don't know who you're cheering for in that series.
Well, the Mariners, actually, they host the Yankees. And if there's one franchise that has had struggles Twins-like against the Yankees, it's the Mariners. So we'll see. I'm not rooting for the Yankees either this series, but I guess I would like them to beat the Mariners a couple times.
So then, a quick look at the National League. The Braves and Mets, Dan, are within a half game of each other for the last National League wildcard spot. So, folks, if you're tuning in at night, maybe you put the kids to bed and you have MLB TV, there are a plethora of games to watch that are interesting. And it's a fun time to be a baseball fan, not just like a fan of one team, but baseball in general. Almost every game that you're going to be able to watch will impact somebody's chances for the postseason.
I'm still hoping for that Padres-Twins World Series, David.
It could happen. Maybe that'll veto the Essen ticket here.
There we go.
But anyway,
that's what I need. I need a cancel. I need an escape hatch or something out of the bottom of the bet.
Okay, well, let's make our picks here for the upcoming Guardian series, which only matters, truly, if the Twins sweep as far as a divisional perspective.
And we'll see you tomorrow night.
Puckett's picks.
The listeners are going to take Buxton, Hoges is going to take Correa, and then it'll go to you, Dan.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick with Royce Lewis. And it is nice that the big three, are going 1, 2, 3 again. It's like April all over again.
It does feel that way. It's been a long time since those three names, Dan, have been picked for Puckett's picks.
Well, it's actually more like March, I think, actually, because in April that wasn't possible anyway. So, yeah, who are you going to go with, though?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Santana. I don't know. The guy keeps winning, and he's swinging the bat really well. It's fun to cheer for a guy who has been a foe of the Twins for so long. To be able to cheer for him as opposed to against him when he's hitting those late-game home runs. It's fun to be on this side of the fence, Dan.
Maybe someday they'll get Salvador Perez, and then we can root for him, too.
It could happen. Dan, this is great. Well, I guess, folks, we will be back after the Guardian series. I'm so curious what the standings will look like. Every passing day, Dan, brings us one step closer to whether this will be a season that we're going to remember because the Twins' collapse was just of biblical proportions, or if it's a season where the Twins got hot and healthy at just the right time and they make a run in the postseason.
Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on X at Min for the Win, and you can find our Min for the Win Facebook and Instagram pages. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platforms so you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating or a like, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Twins.
That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.